2. Okay. Good evening. My name is Councillor Amrit Mann, and I'm the chair of the Planning Committee. It's now almost 5:30. Unfortunately, we've been having some technical issues, and hence we're late. But this is the virtual meeting for the Planning Committee. I would like to welcome the members of the committee who are sitting this evening, as well as council officers who will be assisting members throughout the meeting. My name is Councillor Amrit Mann, and I'm the chair of the planning. Okay, we've got some resonance. Okay, shall I carry on? Okay, in addition, I would like to welcome members of the public who are watching this meeting at home. As you all may know, until recently, virtual meetings of the council business were not legal. But as a result of the coronavirus pandemic and the quarantine arrangements required by government, the law has recently been changed to let local authorities meet in a virtual way to make decisions. Therefore, this meeting is taking place using the recently introduced government regulations. The way this meeting will work will be that as the chair, I will be running the meeting and inviting people to speak. As it is very easy for people to speak over each other in meetings like this, I will ask each member or officer to speak in turn at the appropriate stage. This will mean that there should normally be no need for people to interrupt or to speak. However, I shall make sure that members have ample opportunity to ask questions and make comments on the reports and applications before them. The exception to this arrangement will be the legal, committee or planning officers who may turn on their microphones to alert me to any legal, governance or planning issue that needs addressing, although I would expect this to be a rare occurrence. In addition, we have producer of the meeting for our ICT department who may also contact me if necessary, but I think this is unlikely if all goes well, as we all hope it will. The etiquette for members of the committee and for officers who are expecting to speak will be to mute your microphones until you're asked to speak. This means that only one person will be speaking at a time and there will be no background noise, making it easier for us to follow the meeting and also for those who are watching at home. I will also ask members to always say who their contribution and to speak slowly and clearly for the same reason. We have 6 members of the planning committee with us here this evening, and it is we who will be making the decisions. Officers of the council will provide assistance and advice as required, but the final decisions will be made by the members. I would like now to introduce each of my members here tonight one by one. I will start. My name, as I said, is Councillor Amrit Mann. I am the chair of this committee and I'm also the ward councillor for Heston East. Can I now invite Councillor Richard Foote to introduce himself?
Right, I'm Councillor Richard Foote. I'm Vice Chair of Planning, and I am the elected member for Hamworth Ward.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Can I now ask Councillor Michael Dennis to introduce himself?
Yes, hello. My name is Michael Dennis, and I'm the member for Chiswick Riverside.
Thank you, Michael. Can I now ask Councillor Hina Mir to introduce herself? She's on the phone and not on video at the moment. So, Hina?
Hello, everyone. I'm Councillor Hina Mir, and I'm elected member for Felton West. Thank you.
Thank you, Hina. Can I ask Councillor Salman Shaheen to introduce himself?
Hello, I'm Councillor Salman Shaheen. I'm the councillor for Isleworth. I'm also chair of Isleworth and Brentford Area Forum.
Good. Councillor Mohammed Umair to introduce himself.
Good evening all, Councillor Mohammed Umair, Councillor for Felton West.
Okay, thank you, Mohammed. Can I now invite officers of the planning side of things. Richard Coomber, who's been having difficulties with his video, but he's on the phone. Robert?
Robert Coomber, yes, I'm the Central Area Planning Manager and I'm presenting the planning reports this evening.
Okay. Kieran Coughlin?
Good afternoon. My name is Kieran Coughlin and I'm a transport planner with the council.
Okay, thank you, Kieran. Now I'm going to invite the legal and governance team to introduce themselves. Jessica Farmer.
Hello, I'm Jessica Farmer and I'm giving the legal advice to the committee this evening.
Thank you, Jessica. Jyoti Patel. Jyoti? No? Chaspal Sandhu?
Hello, I'm Chaspal Sandhu and I'm here from Democratic Services.
Ah, okay. Thank you, Chaspal. Oh, we've got Jyoti on. Jyoti, would you just introduce yourself, please?
Okay. Hello, I'm Jyoti Patel. I'm from Democratic Services and clerking the meeting along with my colleague Chaspal.
Okay, thank you, Jyoti. We also have officers acting a producing role for the technical side of this meeting, but as they're not expected to be involved in a discussion of the meeting, I will thank them for their help, but not ask them to introduce themselves. It's Sadiq who is doing the producing tonight. Right, so let's move on. Some further information. Members of the public are reminded that the agenda and all reports being considered by the committee tonight can be found on the council website under the planning committee meetings page. So if you want to see them, that is where to look. I also want to make sure that all members have seen the agenda and reports. So if you haven't, speak now, otherwise I will take it that everybody has had those reports. Okay, thank you. I would like to remind members of the need to hear all the evidence in each report we are considering tonight. This means that you should listen to the whole debate. Please do not pop out to make a cup of tea or walk the dog. This is a legal requirement and I will be asking you to confirm you have heard the whole debate before you vote on any matter this evening. If you should find you are having technical problems, as we've had earlier on, and you need to log out of the meeting and come back in, please let me know immediately, ideally beforehand, but if not, afterwards, by turning on your microphone. This would be a permitted interruption. We can then decide how far we need to recap, if that is necessary, or if the member needs not to vote on that item. So finally, I would say to any member of the public listening or watching, thank you for joining us this evening. We hope that this meeting will go well, but the virtual meetings may suffer from unexpected technical hitches. So please bear with us and we apologize in advance as we've had some issues this evening. I should also clarify that this meeting is being recorded and it will be made available on the council's YouTube channel in the next few days. Contributors to the meeting are asked to remember that they are therefore will be included in the recording of this public meeting. Thank you. We will now move on to the first item on the agenda. So the first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. We would usually have a much large number of members sitting on the planning committee, but for virtual meetings, we have concluded it is much better to have a smaller number of members. So apart from me and Councillor Foote as the vice chair, other members of the planning committee will be attending virtual meetings on a rota basis in accordance with political proportionality. This does not mean that those members who are not here this evening are absent or need to send apologies, and they will not be marked down on the attendance list maintained by the council. So, first of all, we've got 6 members, and I know that they're there, so I don't need to confirm. And then we are quorate, so we could actually go straight in to the main agenda. which is declaration of interest under the Town and Country Planning Code or guidance or any other communications for members. Does any member now need to make a declaration or give any other communication? Please speak now if you wish to do so. If there is more than one person, I will give the order in which you can speak. Any declarations of interest? Okay, so I would assume that there are no declaration of interests. Let's go on to the minutes. Sorry, just before we go on to minutes, any other communications you've received from any of those three items, be it from the applicant or the objectors or anything along those lines? Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Chairman. I sent a declaration of interest that I had to you and also to Wendy prior to the meeting, just to say that I visited one of the neighbours of 31 Foster Road to see the site. But that's all.
Okay, that's fine. Anybody else? No. Okay. So let me move on to the minutes.
Just Councillor Mann. Chair.
Yeah, Umar.
Chair, can you hear me? Councillor
Yeah, yeah, we can hear
I
you.
received a couple of emails for the items, generic emails that you'd received before from applicants.
Okay, so let's assume that all of the committee members have had some form of communication, be it by email, right, regarding the applications from either the applicants or some of the objectors. So if we put that as a part of the record, is that okay? Okay, let's move on to the minutes. Minutes of the meeting, which is held on the 6th of August 2020. So I'm going to take matters rising and corrections, accuracy, all in one go, right? So we'll do it page by page. Okay, so pages 1, 2, and 3. Can we agree those minutes, colleagues?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, so let's go on to the meeting of the 20th of August 2020. So pages 4, 5. Is there anything there? So can we agree those minutes?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Let me move on now to the main Planning Substantive Committee agenda. So we now move on to the planning applications. We need to time contribute. I will ask the legal officer to alert me to when allocated timing has been reached. I will ask her to alert me prior to the guillotine being reached if we have not concluded the meeting by that time. May I remind all members, officers and public speakers at this meeting to introduce themselves each time they speak and also to turn off their microphones when they're finished speaking. It is also important to speak slowly and clearly so everyone can understand what you're saying. Finally, if you're making references to any agenda documentation, please give the page and paragraph details. Okay, so the first application we have is item 531 Foster Road, Chiswick. The process for this application with speakers is as follows. If there is a ward councillor speaking, and I know there is, Councillor Joan Biddulph, so welcome. I will invite the councillor to speak first. Members will then have a chance to ask questions of Councillor Biddulph. I will then invite the objector, Caroline Cuss, to collectively speak for 5 minutes in total. Members will then have an opportunity to ask questions of the objector. I will then allow the applicant to make their presentation for a total of 5 minutes. That's Paul Broderick and Ming Ko. Members will then similarly have a chance to ask questions of the applicant. Officers will then give their presentation on the application and members will be able to speak and ask questions as well. Members will be able to make comments and debate the applications. We will then go to a vote. This process means that the committee will be able to get all the information it needs to make a decision in a way which is fair to all parties. So before I bring in Councillor Bidoff, we need to know a bit about the application. Robert Coomber is going to do a quick trot through, not an in-depth presentation, but a quick trot through about 31 Foster Road. So, Robert, are you on? If you could give a quick summary.
I am, Chair. This is a single-storey rear and side extension, replacing an existing side extension, but covering a larger footprint, and it runs along the boundary with the houses adjoining to the south, which are shown on page 9 of the committee agenda.
Okay. Right, now, can I therefore ask Councillor Bidoff, who is the ward councillor, to do her presentation, and you have 5 minutes, Councillor. Let me know when you're ready and we'll start the clock ticking.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Could I just ask you before I start to explain that you have changed the system slightly and allowed ward councillors to speak for longer than usual? Because that isn't how it was before.
My understanding is that everybody gets 5 minutes.
I think that's new to you, though.
Is it? Let me run it to Jessica, because she's been longer on the committee than I have. Jessica.
Chair, my recollection is that we allow, it's a discretion of the chair about how long you allow the ward councillor to speak. So if you're allowing Councillor Bidoff 5 minutes, then that seems a good length of time.
Okay. Councillor Bidoff, since I've been in the chair, I've given everybody a fair crack at the whip. So 5 minutes is for everybody, and I apologise if you were thinking you were going to get longer, but 5 minutes is everybody, right? So you've got your 5 minutes. Let me know when you're ready, and we'll start the clock ticking.
I was thinking I was going to get less.
No, you will get 5 minutes. Excellent.
It's more under you, but I have got 5 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. I'm Joanna Bidoff, Councillor for Turnham Green Ward. Of course, both the applicant and the objector live in my ward. I was elected to represent them both. In this case, they are on opposite sides of the fence, so of course I visited them both, seeing the arguments from both sides of the fence. I don't know if any of you were able to visit, but I can tell you that visiting both was essential. I don't see how you can make a decision in this case without having visited. Being in the applicant's garden gives a totally different perspective. There is no sense of enclosure, and the extension will simply take up more of their garden at the back of their house while retaining an open outlook. In the garden of the objector, which you're looking at now, the impact will be huge. A tall 3-metre wall right up against the boundary. You can see that with the screens with black plastic on them. At the end of this small and short garden blocks the open outlook, which is also due to be enclosed on one side. The sense is not of openness, but of being boxed in. Could I see the other photos of this back screen with the people in them, please? These images show the impact. It's useful to see the scale against people. That's the photo on the right. The existing fence is 6 feet tall. The man is standing on the ground. The woman is sitting on a bench, standing on a bench. The screens they are holding up are exactly the height the extension applied for at 31 Foster Road, and it will be as close. It is on the boundary. Looking now at the magnolia tree, if we could have that photo, the committee report states a proposal has been submitted to ensure the protection of the objector's mature magnolia tree. The image in the report understates the value and significance of the tree, which is more reasonably understood in this image. As you can see, the mature tree is as high as a house, and apart from its aesthetic contribution to all neighbouring gardens, it almost totally screens the 3-storey building opposite the objector for most of the year. It is only 1.2 metres from the boundary fence, and there is a risk that the construction of the proposed foundations and wall would so badly damage the tree that it dies. Because of her concern to safeguard the tree, the objector commissioned her own arboricultural report, which suggested exploring ways the construction might be safely conducted, but none has been investigated. The objector will say more about the applicant's arboriculturist report, which is also wrongly depicts the proposed wall as being 2 meters from the boundary. It will be on the boundary. In response, the arboriculturist advised that the drawing was not specific to the site. How can the plan ensure the tree's protection in the absence of any detail specific to the particular circumstances of this site? Both properties lie within Special Area K of the Urban Context and Character Study, notable for its highly uniform appearance on a regular street grid with high overall architectural quality, albeit with some insensitive roof extensions. The area has the potential to be considered for conservation status, which is a constant discussion locally. Could we have a photo of the extension next door, please? This next image depicts the proposed new extension with the previous roof extension permitted in 1995. I can't agree that the cumulative impact of these 2 extensions conforms to policy SC7, which is not to overdevelop mass or density, nor to cause harm by unacceptable enclosure. The objector's neighbour at 77 Wavendon Avenue was recently granted permission to construct a rear extension 3 metres deep and inset approximately 1 metre from the boundary fence. I asked committee members to weigh the cumulative impact of this extension together with the applicant's 2 extensions when considering whether an unacceptable sense of enclosure would be created at 75 Wavendon Avenue. This image also indicates where the objector's rear fence is in relation to the proposed extension, which spans very nearly the whole width of the back garden at the boundary and is 3 metres high. I'd like to go back to the images we saw at the start, please, as a reminder of the scale and impact on outlook and sense of enclosure. The wall will be dominating. It will harm the objector's enjoyment of her house and, just as relevant, of her garden. I sincerely believe that the applicants do not appreciate the harm their extension will cause, and I urge you to refuse consent. If you could put the photo on the right is the one to look at. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Biddulph. Now, going back to our committee members, and I will go in order as alphabetical order for questions to Councillor Biddulph. So, Councillor Richard Foote, any questions to Councillor Biddulph?
Yes, Chair. I was trying to find the equivalent photo, but it's the photograph of the plan of the extensions. What it's not clear on that plan from where I'm sitting is whether or not it's coming up to the boundary fence, or I seem to remember in the text somewhere saying that the walkway is down the side of the premises. That's this one, yeah. Between the blue and the white fence, I can't tell because of the way it's drawn whether or not there is a walkway down the side or whether this blue building comes right up to the fence. Just everybody can answer that, but I presume Councillor Biddulph knows.
It fills in the current walkway and goes right up to the fence.
Okay.
It's taking in the current walkway, which would go, and the building is right on the boundary with the fence.
Okay. Richard, any further questions?
No, not at this stage, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. Councillor Michael Dennis, any questions to Councillor Biddulph?
Oh yes, please. Yes, I was quite taken by those photos and of the height of those black fences which have been erected. That's quite powerful. But thinking about the cumulative effect, I see. Do you think that the sort of the reduction of the size of the garden also adds to this effect that you're talking about from SC7? Do you think that the reduction of the size of the garden in the applicant's garden adds to that cumulative effect that you're talking about?
The addition is the other extension that is expected from the house next door.
Yes, I see.
There would be a block on one side and then ahead as well. The impact on the applicant's garden is simply to shift the back of the house. So when you're sitting in the garden, you've got the same view, the same outlook. You've just chosen to extend the back of your house.
Yes.
So it doesn't affect their outlook. It does affect this one, as you can see from these screens, considerably.
Oh yes, I see. Okay, no, that's all. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Dennis, thank you very much. Councillor Hina Mir, any questions for Councillor Biddulph?
Hello, this is Councillor Hinami. No question at this stage. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Salman Shaheen, any questions?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just one. I mean, it does obviously seem quite striking, the size of that, the height of that black fence looming over the neighbouring garden. Does it block out any light? And if so, at what times of the day, say during a summer period?
Yes, it does block out the light. I haven't got photographs to illustrate that, but clearly it's another several feet, as you can see. It's another metre above that, or more than a metre above that. So it will have an effect on the light. I'm sorry, I can't tell you which times of day. It's maybe that's a question for the objector rather than for me, as she lives there.
Okay, Salman, any further questions? Okay, thank you. Councillor Mohammed Umair, any questions for Councillor Biddulph?
Thank you, Chair. This is Councillor Mohammed Umair. No comments from myself.
Okay, thank you. I myself, there's no questions. So, Councillor Biddulph, thank you for that presentation. Now we move on to the objector, and the objector is Caroline Cuss. Caroline, you're on the phone. Are you still there? Hello?
Her microphone may be on mute. Caroline, if you can hear us, could you dial *6 on your phone, please? Thank you.
Hello? Caroline? I think we may have lost her. We'll give her a few more minutes.
It's still on mute at the moment, so you should try *6 again, I think, Caroline.
Yeah, Caroline, if you can hear us, can you press *6 to unmute yourself, please?
Can you?
Oh, yep, just about.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah. Can
right.
you hear us?
Okay.
Right. Okay, Caroline.
Okay.
So you are the objector and you have 5 minutes in order to do your presentation. When you're ready, let me know and then we'll start the clock.
Okay, I'm ready now.
Okay, off you go.
I wouldn't have invited you to visit my property, nor spent thousands of pounds resisting this application unless it caused harm. My main objection concerns harm to my amenity, mostly visual, and I'll focus on that. Policy CC1 says plans should conserve and take opportunities to enhance particular features or qualities that contribute to an area's character, e.g. mature trees. This proposal, by potentially damaging roots and canopy, threatens my mature magnolia tree visible from several gardens. Officers have stated since the 12th of June the tree wasn't a sufficient reason to be refused planning permission. No one from planning had visited either property, and the application, despite being validated, showed no photographs and denied the tree existed. More importantly, its protection is a material consideration that must be weighed. To conclude it's insufficient before any arboriculturist report was supplied prejudges outcomes. The applicant's arboriculturist report is inadequate. First, it suggests roots could better regrow under my waterproof shed and concrete paths than under my neighbour's similar paths. Next, it included a drawing indicating where protective measures were intended that can't be implemented because the wall is shown in the wrong place. The arboriculturist responded that the drawing was generic and didn't represent the real site, even though, oddly, he later marked it up to show where measures were to be located. If the drawing isn't representative, then there is nothing in that report that is, and no site-specific tree protection plan exists. Significantly, if the marked-up revised protective measures were representative, They couldn't be implemented either for reasons previously cited. The officer's report summarily dismisses my comments because I'm not an arboriculturist. I just use my logic. The officer's report quotes my arboriculturist indicating potential technical solutions, but omits mention of the next sentence, concluding that amending the application to keep the current juxtaposition of tree and wall would best safeguard the tree. Now, design. The proposed wraparound extension dominates surrounding properties, contravening policy. It runs from one side of the garden to the other, and then an unbroken brick wall extends 11.9 metres, filling the rear side passage. Policy SC7 says proposals shouldn't overdevelop the site in terms of mass and density and must minimise harm to neighbouring residents, avoiding an unacceptable loss of outlook or creating an unacceptable sense of enclosure. The second extension's design neither reflects that of the first extension nor the original Edwardian building, which is now subsumed. That boundaries wall's dominance wipes out my only outlook, contravening policy. This guidelines doesn't define dominance, but other government guidelines do, e.g. hemmed in by the construction of a large blank wall and usually causing loss of light, just like here. Officers state policy allows wraparounds, but omit to note the reservations on unacceptable blocking of daylight and sunlight to neighbours. Policy states such wraparounds may be acceptable, but sets strict conditions for boundaries. The extension is described as 3 metres deep. That the boundary actually extends 11.9 metres off the rear wall, its height contravening policy. Officers say it is not unacceptably high, but the guidelines explicitly state a maximum 2 metres height sloping at 45 degrees for such wraparounds is allowed. This extension rises vertically to 3 metres at the boundary, plainly contrary to policy that determines decision-making. Planning decisions must also be consistent, and inconsistency is a material consideration. There haven't been any wraparounds in Foster Road during this local plan. One case I've cited here had to remove the wraparound. 2 local cases I've cited also had wraparounds refused. It's the same planners, but a completely opposite recommendation. Why? Because my house isn't alongside my neighbours, my property is. However, their report ignores the policy reasons given in those previous determinations that additionally cite scale in both extension depth and height and adverse impact on character and neighbours. The report's recommendation manifestly fails to comply with the local plan, gives no reason to justify departure from it, and fails to weigh competing interests. I respectfully ask you refuse consent.
Caroline, okay, your time's up.
Sorry.
You need a drink.
Yep, I'm just going to have a swallow.
Okay, so
Thank you.
have some water, and then we'll ask the committee members for questioning to you. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Are you ready?
Okay. I think that's fine now. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Thank you for your presentation. And let me go to my committee members for their questions to you. Councillor Richard Foote, any questions to Caroline?
Thank you, Chair. No, I don't have any questions at this time for Caroline. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you, Richard.
Councillor Michael Dennis, any questions to Caroline?
Yes, I did. Hello, Caroline. It's Michael.
Michael.
Councillor Dennis here. Hello. One of the councillors actually has a very good question, so Councillor Shaheen does have a very good question actually, which he will ask you, which I would have asked. But I just wanted to ask, how long have you been in the property?
27 years.
Yes. And has anything like this happened before at such height as what's being proposed in the application?
Absolutely not.
No, not before. No.
No, absolutely, categorically not.
No. And do you know how old the magnolia tree is?
I don't know its exact age. It was a well-developed tree by the time we moved in.
Yes.
I would imagine. I think my arboriculturist thought it was between 40 and 50.
Oh right. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
Oh, hold on. Is it more like 30? I'm sorry, I should have that information at my fingertips.
No, that absolutely. Okay, it's an old tree. No, that's helpful.
It should have another 20 years of life at least.
Yeah.
What he said.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. No, that's very helpful to know. No, that's all I was going to ask. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Dennis. Councillor Hina Mir, any questions to Caroline?
This is Councillor Hinami. No questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Salman Shaheen, questions?
Hello there, Councillor Salman Shaheen here. My only question is to repeat the question asked to Councillor Bidoff earlier, who said there could well be a loss of light. I wanted to ask you what times of day you would find a loss of light at during, say, the summer period.
I have to say that amazingly, for a northerly facing garden, I get a surprising amount of light for most of the day, but especially in the afternoon and early evening, I suppose. I can, I have lovely open sky view with a lot of greenery, and the light just pours over that fence. It's just weird, but I suppose it's a similar phenomenon to the fact that artists like their studios to face north. It's a particular quality of light, and I should miss it desperately if it were shut out by a 3-meter wall. Is that a satisfactory answer?
Well, I just wanted to see if it indeed would you, because you are northerly facing, and that's at the north side of the garden. Is that correct? Would you be losing light at that?
Yes.
And at what times you would?
Yes, I would. It's mainly in the afternoon that I notice it, from about midday onwards, I suppose.
Okay, thank you.
Really, I mean, because on my easterly side, where there is also going to be an extension. Obviously, that's where I get most of my morning light from. But because the northerly outlook is my only open outlook, I tend to notice the light very much from that direction.
Got you. I understand. Thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Salman. Councillor Mohammed Umair.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Mohammed Umair here. No questions for myself, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And myself, Caroline, there are no questions. So thank you for your presentation.
Thank you for listening.
And let's move on to the applicant. The applicant is Paul Broderick, and for the questioning, they may take on Mr. Ming Ko. Yeah. Okay. So Paul Broderick, are you on the telephone or online?
Good evening, Chair. I'm on the telephone.
Okay. Paul, let me know when you're ready, and you have 5 minutes. I understand it's just you speaking, and with any technical questions in the questioning session, Ming Ko to come in. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So let me know when you're ready, and your 5 minutes will start.
Thank you. I'll start now.
Okay. Off you go.
Good evening, Chair, members. This is a very common form of development for terrace properties, where underutilised space from down the side of the outrigger is infilled and wraps around to a single-storey extension on the end of the outrigger. The flat roof form of the development minimises its visual impact and its impact on adjoining neighbours. As it does not have any unacceptable amenity impacts on its neighbours, there are no reasonable grounds for refusing planning permission for this development. In considering the impact of the extension on the rear gardens of some of the Wavendon Avenue houses, there are several factors that ensure that the proposed extension will not unduly affect the amenity and enjoyment of these gardens, such as the fact that the extension is located at the far end of these north-facing gardens, and it is only single-storey and has a flat roof, means it will have a negligible impact on them. The size and depth of these neighbouring gardens. These gardens are of a good size and they're not excessively small where adjoining walls could potentially have a greater impact. And lastly, these gardens already have boundary fences and trees at the end of them, and their presence reduces the impact of the extension. And just a couple of points. The use of black screens to demonstrate the height of the extension is rather unfortunate. And this exaggerates the impact of the extension because the extension will be brick coloured, and most importantly, only a small section of it will be visible above the objector's existing fence, which is wood coloured and covered in foliage. It is also highly improbable that approximately 1 metre of additional height on the boundary of a north-facing garden will have a discernible impact on light afforded to the neighbouring garden. In terms of the impact of the extension on the rear of the Wavendon Avenue properties themselves, the distance of this proposed extension from the rear walls of these houses makes it impossible to reasonably argue that a single-storey structure situated between 11 and 13 metres from the rear of these neighbouring properties could adversely affect them. Finally, in terms of the adjoining neighbour to the north at 29 Foster Road, the 3 metre deep extension on this particular boundary complies with the council's local planning policy, specifically their residential extensions guidelines, SPD in section 4.3. Also, the extension has exactly the same impact as a 3 metre permitted development extension in this position would. So this degree of impact in terms of height and depth on adjoining 29 Foster Road is already sanctioned by the GPDO. Thank you.
Okay, Paul, thank you for that. Right, let's go to the committee members for questions. Councillor Richard Foote, any questions to Paul and Ming?
Yes, Chair, thank you. I'm just trying to, I'm getting confused by these pictures about gardens and quite what they're looking at, because I've got a Google map that I printed off earlier for Forest Road and Wavendon Avenue, and I can't see how at the bottom of these gardens how we're seeing buildings. You know, if it's I don't know where this building is in relation to number, what was it, 31? So I've got some problems with that and trying to work that out. Well, there was something else. Yeah, there's a term that you use. I'm trying to find where I saw it, which it's, yeah, trees. No, I'm sorry, Chair. No, I'm losing. I've lost it. But it basically, I should think of building term, and it's to do with the wraparound. But I've lost its position. But as a logistician, I don't have a lot of information. I don't have a lot of knowledge about buildings, so you'll have to.
Okay, Richard, do you want to find that, and I'll come back to you after.
Yeah, by all means, carry on.
Okay, yeah, because that way, then what's it called? We make better use of time. Councillor Michael Dennis, any questions to Paul and Ming?
Oh yeah, just one. The height of the would you be able to tell me how close the side wraparound? So may I make one small point before I ask a question, just to answer something that Councillor Foote said, or shall I go straight to my question?
Is it for seeking information from Paul?
It's just to clarify. No, it isn't. No, I'll go straight to my question then. No, okay. That's fine. No. One question is, could you tell me precisely how close the side extension, and this is the extension which the back of 75 Wavendon Avenue faces, how distant that would be from the fence?
It's built directly behind the fence.
Oh, directly behind the fence, right? Oh, I see. Okay, yes. And could you explain why you don't think that increasing that height by 1 meter wouldn't block out the lights or create an unreasonable blocking of the sun?
Yes, I mean, north facing will have, because that garden is north facing, and it's very, like, if you consider if you imagine a sun path, it will cast very little shade. If you measured like the shade there is now coming across from there, and then you put an extra meter on, the difference would be negligible. Yeah, you just wouldn't notice.
But going into the winter, that there would be less sun to go in and considerably more darkness, surely.
They'll just. It's not a big enough structure to do that. I mean, a meter is not going to make a difference. It's only it's a single story structure, and it's difficult to imagine how that can affect the rear end of a garden.
Yes.
Where there's already a boundary fence of a 2 meter high.
Well, that's okay. Thanks very much for
the
listening.
light can move that. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. No, that was all I was going to ask. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Paul. Councillor Hina Mir, any questions to Paul?
Hello, this is Councillor Hina Mir. No questions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Hina. Councillor Salman Shaheen.
No questions.
Okay. Councillor Mohammed Umair, any questions to Paul and Ming?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Mohammed Umair. Just a question for the applicant on the protection of the tree. Could you just provide a briefing on what kind of methods you've looked into in order to ensure protection for the roots?
That is detailed in the committee report. The arboriculturist has proposed something, and the council, I presume, the council's arboriculturist has looked at that and concluded that it's a appropriate methodology. You'll have to bear with me. I'll have to look that up. So I didn't write the arboriculturist report.
I understand that you're referring to section 7.15 and up to I think 7.19 of the but it references the assessment that was carried out, I believe, but from yourself, or was there
no,
it referenced a few, and it references a few methods. I mean, have you looked into these methods to see what's the most feasible way of protecting the tree? Because I know you've submitted a proposal to the committee.
The arboriculturist has proposed. Sorry.
Yeah, certainly. Simon is the agricultural consultant. He's been working on the field over the 30 years. So he suggests that the method is applicable because it certainly we can do all the protection from our side, and also in the future, if necessary, we will also discuss the formation of the foundation with the structural engineer, which will certainly address that anything we will avoid to damage the tree root and things like that.
Okay, Mohammed, does that help?
I mean, I know. I mean, there's a reference. I mean, I see that there's been a concern of a fully mature magnolia trees, a few of them actually, and I mean, there's been a reference in the report to certain methods, types being used, the arboricultural method, for instance. But I mean, there isn't any specific detail or confirmation as to. But I mean, that's what I was looking for in particular. But yeah.
It may be worthy of a question to Robert when he does his main presentation, right? If they haven't got the report in front of them, because I think Robert should have all the information. If that's okay with you.
That's fine. Sure.
Okay. Any further questions?
That's fine. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you for that, Mohammed. I don't have any questions, so I'm going to go back to my vice chair, Councillor Richard Foote, hoping that he's found the question that he was looking for to be asked. So, Richard Foote.
Yeah, I found it, Chair. It's really. I was trying to figure out what a wraparound the outrigger projection is. I mean, outrigger projection seems like something that's more appropriate to a boat than a house. So I'd really. You know, as I say, I'm a logistician. I don't know what these things mean, but in buildings, so perhaps somebody could explain that to me.
Paul?
Yes, sorry. Okay, yeah, the outrigger is the main house is the part of the house that faces the street, and on the L-shaped terraced houses, it's the rear projection that is perpendicular, if you imagine, to the main house. if you imagine it in two sections. So the outrigger is the section that protrudes into the garden, and there's always left a narrow passage down the outrigger, because it's not the full width of the main house, that back section. So it's sometimes called a tunnel back and sometimes called an outrigger. Is that clear?
Okay.
Do you understand?
Okay. I think we've all expanded our knowledge on that. Okay, Richard, any further questions?
No, that's all, Chair. I think other than saying that, I don't know, maybe it's me, but 716 and 717, as you know, I'm still hugging trees, but there appears to be arboricultural reports from both the objector and the applicant, and if I'm reading it right, they don't seem to disagree with each other.
Okay, that's strange. Okay, we might have to ask Robert to shed some more light on this. Okay, Paul, look, thank you for your presentation, as well as Ming for the technical assistance. So let me now move on to the officer, Robert Coomber, who's going to do a detailed presentation of this report. And then we will ask questions of Robert. Robert, it's yours.
Sorry, Robert, you're on mute.
That's the first time I've been caught out like that for ages. I'm sorry. We'll start again.
Yeah, it was the first time for everything.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's not the first time, but it's the first time for a long time. Yes, thank you, Chair. As you can see, we just established the facts first. This is, in fact, a semi-detached house, not an end of terrace, with a tapering plot shape, as you can see from the aerial photograph here. With the two-storey rear wing, which is the lighter grey section, and darker grey because part of that is a loft extension, running all the way to the back of the house at the moment, but narrower than the frontage width. Here you can see the property from the street and the narrow side access way, which shows that there's only about probably 80 centimeters between the side wall of the house and the gardens to the south. And on the bottom right hand side you will see the back of the house, where the extension would wrap around and extend out to 3 meters deep, but it would also infill the gap between the boundary and the house itself. So here is the proposed layout. I'm going to just zip through this a moment because I want to find, I think it's in your
agenda.
It's in the agenda, but you can see it from the location plan here. At the moment, the house has got a series of little single-story steps on the side of it. So going back down to the plan, that would be entirely eliminated, starting towards the back of the main two-story part of the house and then butting up against the two-story rear wing, which finishes just where the table and chairs are at the back. Are they sofas? They're probably sofas. And you can see would project 3 meters on the boundary with the adjoining property number 29. And there it is in elevation, and you can see it rises approximately a meter or so above the fence on the boundary. And that is the rear part of that is indeed what you would see from the neighbour's garden, and it would be built in stock brickwork to match the yellow stock brickwork to match the existing house. And there you can see the side wall sloping away on the right hand side. So I knew there was an existing plan. So you can see the existing plan layout here, which shows where the trees are, including the magnolia tree, which is identified as number 3 on the plan there. So about, I think, a meter or so off the boundary. The proposed works would involve a tree protection plan and a tree protection fence to be built during in place during construction. And would require foundations that would necessarily bridge the roots wherever possible. Now, what you need to consider here are whether or not the difference in depth of the extension and whether or not the difference in height of the extension are such that they merit difference in height relative to the neighbour's fence are such that they would merit refusal. And you have to consider the whether or not it would cause loss of light. And it's quite clear, because it's to the north, it would cause no loss of sunlight. And at a distance, at a height of 3 meters or so, at a distance of between 11 and 13 meters from the rear of 75 Wavendon, it is not something that is going to cut out. If you revert to the photographs, it's not something that is going to cut out so much visible sky that it would have a noticeable effect on daylight in the living space. And the garden itself benefits from sky from all directions, and it is not considered that the amount of light lost as a result of the extra height on the boundary would make a noticeable difference to the garden, which is why your officers have not recommended refusal on the basis of loss of light. Turning to the question of it being a wraparound extension, Mrs. Cuss is quite right that we are normally very cautious about extensions that infill these gaps between houses where you've got the 2-story rear wing. And the reason that this consideration is not applicable in this case is because it's not filling in a light well between the backs of 2 houses, and therefore the height is less of a concern, particularly when you set that height for most of its length, albeit not entirely at the back of Mrs. Cuss's garden, against the 2-story structure. So the only effect that we need to consider is, in terms of light and outlook, is really this, because the rest of that extension is set against the mass of the existing house. So just to clarify that, yes, the whole thing is 11.9 meters deep, but it's only 3 meters deep beyond the back and at a point where there are no structures at the moment. And so again, it's necessary to focus on that. So yeah, the Mrs. Cuss referred to the 2-meter height on the boundary with a 45-degree angle of roof, and that's not a consideration we would apply here because we're not seeking to protect light in a light well between houses. And I think that's really all I need to say about it. The photographs speak for themselves. You can see what the height would be on the boundary as viewed from the back. You have to bear in mind, if I scroll down to show the existing fence, that's what is seen at the moment. So you have a fence with a trellis above. So the trellis goes up to just about here already, and that trellis does have, just below the height of the little gazebo structure, so around about there. And that does have foliage growing on it, and there is a lot of tree cover on the garden. We recommend approval because we don't think that either the amount of garden space taken is out of context, or that the extent and appearance of the building is such that it would be overbearing or unneighbourly. But I welcome your questions, and you have all the information before you on which to make a decision. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Okay, so questions to Robert. Let me start with Councillor Richard Foot. Richard?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so I must admit I was getting a bit confused by these particular photos because I was trying to figure out how they were neighbours, and I now realise these are actually properties in Wavendon Avenue, and they're looking at right angles to the property that's being developed. I think
that's correct.
The description as being neighbours sort of threw me a little bit, and I was trying to figure it all out and where the sunlight was coming from. So that's really one of the questions I had, which was, am I right in thinking? I don't know whether it's I'm looking on as I say, on Google Maps, and I'm seeing what looks like a corner property that's got an extension and another one which is probably nearer it. Looks like about the third one down on Wavendon, but that's a guess on my part. Yeah, so really and truly, as said, I don't really know that there's anything else I can ask on that from there. Oh, I'll tell you, just as a favour, Robert, would it be possible on future drawings to indicate north and south on occasions? It's quite difficult sometimes to, you look at these drawings, and then it's not until you put them on over a Google map you realise that the orientation of the drawing is sort of distracting me and thinking I'm thinking it's pointing south when in fact it's pointing west or east. So it would help if we could put those on the drawings.
Chair, our Ordnance Survey extracts always use the standard convention that north is at the top of the page.
That's what I thought, but it isn't always.
Very good.
And usually the writing's the right way up as a result as well.
Knowledge is being expanded further. Okay, Richard, any further questions to Robert?
No, that's all at the moment. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Michael Dennis, questions
Hi.
Robert.
So, I'm so sorry I interrupted you. Hi, Robert, how are you doing?
Fine, Chair.
I've got a question about the garden, which I understand is of the applicant, which I understand is going to be too small as far as the policy SC5 is concerned. Could you tell me a bit about that and why the council has recommended approval despite not reaching the 75 metre guideline?
Yes. In fact, I can't tell you without remeasuring it whether or not it's already below that figure, but the 75 square metre garden size is a size that we apply to new dwellings.
Yes.
The garden size that you need to consider is what the residential extension guidelines say about gardens. Yeah. So they say that normally we would expect that no extension would result in the garden of a house being reduced to less than the footprint of the original house. Now, as you can see from the drawing on your screen at the moment, it's already less than the footprint of the original house. And the context in Chiswick, although this is a standard that we try to apply throughout the borough, the context in Chiswick is there are a lot of big houses with comparatively small gardens. And we did not feel that losing a 3 metre slice of the garden at the back of the house and the side part of the garden, which is of very little amenity value, was something that we felt was sufficiently significant to justify refusal. You may, of course, take your own view on how hard a line you want to impose in relation to the residential extension guidelines, but it certainly does not comply with the word of the guidelines. But the guidelines are guidelines, and then one of the things we have to consider is the context. And as you can see, there are a number of comparatively small gardens nearby, particularly the two immediately to the rear.
And I understand you were talking about the point about sunlight, and that you didn't feel that it would, being a north-facing garden, that it would actually cut that much light. But what do you think about the impact on the the of the neighbours? Looking because I understand that policy SC7 says that the extensions should be provided they do not result in harm to amenity of neighbouring residents, existing and future occupants. I mean, just looking at the site of the extension on the boundary, do you feel that this might result in harm to existing and future occupants of the neighbour, that 75 Wevenden Avenue?
Many of these small gardens are already enclosed by comparatively high boundary treatment, and we did not feel that the additional approximately 1 metre above the trellis was something that we considered of sufficient grounds to refuse planning permission on its own, because we did not think that the increased sense of enclosure would be it would be noticeable, but we did not feel it would be oppressive in its context, and it would absolutely, as I said before, would absolutely have no effect on sunlight whatsoever.
Yes,
it could not do.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for answering my questions.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Councillor Hina Mir, any questions to Robert?
Hello, good evening, Robert. This is Councillor Hina Mir.
Hello,
Just
Councillor.
got one question from you. In terms of this magnolia tree, which is quite mature tree, we have a picture here as well. What are we doing to in terms of protection of the tree? And I can see there is a plan being submitted, but what are these steps we are taking to protect the tree?
Right, I just want to open up a document on my iPad here, so if you just bear with me for a second. Yes, you will see that condition 6 on page 19 of the report recommends that the tree protection plan and the arboricultural method statement are to be followed. And the recommendation is that if these are followed, the longevity and the amenity value of the tree would not be harmed.
So it's subject to.
Yeah, it's entirely possible to design foundations that specifically will protect and bridge important roots of a tree like that. And the applicant's arboriculturalist has submitted a statement with which we agree that it can be done in this case.
All right, okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, Hina, thank you. Councillor Salman Shaheen.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions, Robert. What's number 77 said about it? They're obviously less impacted than number 75, but it will cut across them a little bit. What have they said anything about this?
Let me tell you. Hang on. We have had no submission from number 77.
Okay, thank you very much. And also, I mean, you say that it won't have a noticeable impact on Sky, but Councillor Bidoff previously had said that they're already closed in on the other sides, and that this will box them in fully. I mean, how do we square those two views?
Well, there would be a reduction in visible sky, but we don't think that the extent of reduction of the visible sky, if you think of the angle of elevation, if you're standing with your head at about 1.5 to 2 meters high, depending on how tall you are, looking down the garden towards that structure, you would still see the very large proportion of the sky above it, which is why, while we do accept that there would be some reduction in visible sky, if you take the height of the fence at the moment and the additional height of the masonry that would be put above that, we did not think that the proportional loss of visible sky was such as to justify any loss of daylight to the living rooms and any excessive sense of enclosure.
No, I understand that. Thanks. But I guess what I'm driving at is I can see on the south side. Obviously, there's the house there. What's it like on the east and west side currently? And I don't think the photos we've seen necessarily give us can give me enough of a picture of whether it would be a box or not.
Okay, I can show you the aerial photographs. If I zoom in.
So is that some big trees on both sides?
You got, yes. This is the magnolia tree.
Yeah,
and this is there's quite a lot of tree coverage on this side, but then closer to the house there is no tree cover there. There appears to be a smaller shrub or tree here. So
do we know who on the western side? Do we know who owns the trees?
I'm afraid not, but let me have a look and see if Mrs. Cuss's pictures clarify it.
I suppose what I'm saying is, has Mrs. Cuss boxed herself in, or is it her neighbours who've boxed her in?
I can't see the trunks, I'm afraid, and I haven't been to the site myself, so I can't confirm that, although it's just possible that we've got a tree survey, but I don't know that it covers those trees down the side. Let's have a look. No, it doesn't. It only focuses on the trees immediately adjacent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't have the technology, I'm afraid, to. You can sometimes tell it from Google Earth, but it's usually not very clear exactly where the trunk is. So without a further visit to the site, I couldn't say.
Okay.
Okay, Salman, any
No,
further
that's
questions?
great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Salman. Councillor Mohammed Umair.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of clarity from Rob, and just there seems to be well. Firstly, how many trees are we talking about here, in quantity? And secondly, just to echo what Councillor Hiname's mentioned earlier, on those trees. I mean, in terms of protection, I think it was at 0.7.616. The applicants question the integrity of the report. I mean, just for personal or for my personal reference, could you also highlight? I mean, how do we ensure the assessment that was carried out? It's laid out as it says, and there is no actual real damage to the roots of the trees.
We have a reasonable degree of expertise in the planning department in relation to trees. In fact, the area manager who covers this site has got landscaping qualifications, so she's better placed than many of us to understand that. So I think we could be reasonably satisfied. If you see on paragraph 4.4 of the report, you can see how far away the magnolia is from the boundary, which, as I said, was approximately a metre, perhaps a fraction more. And that is the only substantial tree that is likely to be affected. There are two lower quality trees, one of which are holly and the other a Cotoneaster, which are in number 77. So in answer to your first question, 3 trees, of which only one is of reasonable quality, such that we would wish to see it protected. And we consider that the tree protection plan and the arboricultural method statement achieve that.
Mohammed, any further questions?
No further questions, but I'm just not fully convinced with the explanation, but no further questions.
Okay, right. I don't have any questions for Robert. So we now move on to the debate side. So debate or comments from members. So again, I will ask Councillor Richard Foote for any of his input. Councillor Richard Foote.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I think it's coming back to the trees again. Yeah, I mean, looking at these, and I mean, I don't make a great deal of differentiation between what is, you know, category C and category A's, etc., and low value trees. To me, all trees are of relatively high value. But I can understand that if you've got a magnolia tree in your garden and all of the beauty that goes with that, especially at certain times of the year, then you'd want to protect it. But I'm looking at the lines on this particular map. So I'm looking at the tree which 70, that's 75. It's not Waverden Avenue, isn't it? Where the trunk of the magnolia is. But I presume the blue line would be some sort of view about, I don't know, is it talking about the greenery part, or is it talking about where the root structures would be leading to? If it's the root structures, then they could have been causing a problem in somebody else's property next door. But that's what worries me, you know, is where you protect the tree and where you have to draw a line on it. Cheers, Chair. That's just my comment there.
Okay. Councillor Michael Dennis, comments in the debate.
Thank you, Chair. Well, my comments are really that I cannot understand why this officers have approved this move this application for approval, given the height of that that's right on the boundary. I mean, at 3 meters is very high, and I'm trying to reconcile that with the local plan. And I'm a big believer in the local plan, and also the residential extension guidelines, which I have had a look at. Now these show that extensions should not cause unacceptable enclosure and block sunlight and daylight, and I feel that it does produce that unacceptable enclosure. In the garden of 75 Avondon Avenue, I found those sort of gazebo style erections by the fence very powerful indeed. I can see how sunlight is going to be blocked there, particularly in the winter months. Now, I did have the advantage of going to see that garden when I was a couple of days ago, and I visited about 5:30, and I stayed there till about just after 6. And I could see that there was a sort of limited light coming through as a result of that. So I'm feeling very uneasy about them. For me, the rub of the issue is this wall, and it's very unfortunate that it's right on the boundary. I'm also slightly uncomfortable about the garden being reduced in size below acceptable. And for me, I think going back to what Councillor Biddulph was talking about, the cumulative the cumulative impact, which is set out very clearly in SC7 of the local plan, where they talk about having cumulative impact of the proposed conversion and looking at the vicinity of the site, where it's designed to ensure that there is no undue loss of amenity for neighbouring occupiers. And I feel that this would create such a loss that actually it would make it very difficult for not only the existing occupiers but also future ones, and possibly even reduce the value of that neighbouring property. I would be very reluctant to vote for it. I would, however, support a motion to add any condition that might reduce the size of this extension on the side, and also if councillors felt that this ought to be deferred and looked at again, and possible having an option to reduce that, I would be happy to support that as well. But in its present state, I cannot support it.
Chair, I think it's probably sensible if I clarify at this point that you couldn't use a condition to vary the proposal. In this case, you would have to vote on whether or not it should be deferred for amendment, and then invite the applicants to consider whether or not they wish to amend, or whether or not they wish it to be considered as it stands.
Okay. Thank you, Robert, for the clarification. Let me go through the list and seek other members' input, and then we will debate what we want to do with it at the end of that. Yeah. Okay. So, Councillor Hina Mir, your comments.
Hello, good evening, everyone. This is Councillor Hina Mir. No comments from my end, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Salman Shaheen.
Thank you, Chair. If you'll pardon the pun, I have to say I'm rather on the fence on this one.
Very good.
Now, things to consider. I'm willing to take Robert at his word that the root structure of the magnolia tree is not going to be harmed by the foundations. I think a lot of great work's gone into this. I'm also willing to believe that there won't be any loss of light in terms of sunlight falling on the ground from a from an extension built at the end of a north-facing garden. I can't see physically how that would happen, but clearly what is going to happen is there will be a reduction in the sky. I can clearly see that can happen, and I think from every picture that I've seen, it does look like number 75 is enclosed on all sides. I don't know, of course, where the fault lies in that. It could well be that number 75 has put quite a lot of tall trees on the western edge of the garden and in a sense boxed off one end. But that's not really up for us to determine. And I do worry about the height. I completely accept the applicant's right to extend their property, but I'm kind of in agreement with Councillor Dennis that we should defer in the hope of an application which is slightly shorter comes in. I don't see the need for a 3 metre tall single story extension. No one's that tall.
Okay, Councillor Mohammed Umair.
Thank you, Chair. No particular comments, but I mean, probably just echoing what Councillor Shaheen and I think Councillor Dennis just mentioned earlier. Really, it's yeah, it's a bit of a fence line for myself at the minute, unless any of the other councillors could add some more clarity, which may help me hop over to either end of the fence. And most probably would be I mean, it may be a reasonable suggestion, I mean, to have it deferred if I mean, of course, if that's the okay with the applicant, and of course whatever the appropriate methods or process would be. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm still, I mean, I'm sure the debate is still open. Yeah, and no comments for myself further than that.
Okay, so actually that just leaves me on this one. I think that either we have faith in our officers or we don't, because some of the reports that have been written, because obviously there's been 2 arborist reports and they come to the same conclusions or similar conclusions. And I actually take what Councillor Dennis has said in terms of whether there's ways of trying to mitigate some of the, shall we say, the intrusions or the lost light. Given what Robert has put in his report, what are we actually, by moving deferment, and I'm in completely in your hands as a committee, what is it that we're trying to achieve by deferring it? You know, I'm not sure, because given that the report is written that there is very minimal loss of light, what modifications can be made to the applicant's application in order to facilitate some of what we're asking? Because if it's just in relation to, let's say, the angle of the roof, right, I'm not sure, and maybe I want to bring Robert back in, having heard some of the comments, to see if there's a way of moving forward, right, before somebody moves one or the other, right? So if I know Mohammed Umair is unsure because you're sitting on the fence, as is Councillor Shaheen, it might be an idea as to let us know as to what issues are ones that are affecting you, so that we can actually move you one way or the other. Because obviously anything that we put off today, it comes back to this committee, and given that there is a deluge of applications in the pipeline, if it's something very serious and we're absolutely agreed on it, then it's no issue. We can revisit this. But I just want to bring Robert in and see. Well, Michael, you got your hand up. Let's ask you first, because then I'll get Robert to pick up some of the points.
Thank you very much, Shay. You're being very fair tonight. I wanted to just say that I think trust in the officers. I know that absolutely no question. I absolutely trust the officers, and ever since I've been on this committee, I've been very impressed by their professionalism. The issue, and I'm particularly with the magnolia tree, I would agree with Councillor Salmon that the happy to accept what the officer said about the roots. No, the issue for me about the deferment, it would be entirely about the height of the and Rob, I'm going to raise something I think that Robert would be very good to answer about the side extension, because it was quite interesting from the local plan, which said that if and this isn't the case here, but if the height of the wall had exceeded 3.65, then the recommended height of the side extension would be 2 meters. But this is 3 meters at the moment, and admittedly it is below the 3.65 meter limit. But being at 3 meters, I think that is although technically being within the 3.65, I can understand why officers have recommended for approval. It just in this, on having seen it on the ground, I can see that this is going to create an enclosure, and I would, depending on what Robert suggests, maybe having a limit of 2 meters in this case would be reasonable.
Okay, Salman, I see your hand go up. Let me bring you in and then get Robert to actually look at all the points that you've raised, or all the members have raised. Okay, Salman.
Thanks, Chair. No, I completely concur with Councillor Dennis. It is the height. That would be the thing that would get me off the fence. If it was lowered from 3 meters, I'd be quite happy to approve this. I think, you know, I'm no architect, but I believe that, you know, you could have a building that came 2 meters or 2.5 meters, and you could have an internal step down within the building, which would allow you to have the same personal space inside the building once you've dug down. I'm no architect, as you say, but I believe that would probably work. I think if we just lowered the height a little bit, maybe not even as much as 2 meters, but just a little bit, I think that would get me off the fence.
Okay, Robert, you've heard some of the comments, and really before we go into what we want to do, could you address some of those points that were raised?
Certainly, Chair. I think what this really rotates around is the key factor in the residential extension guidelines about whether or not, and indeed in policy SC7, about whether or not something would be overbearing, and there is an extent to which that is a subjective view. We took the view that the change in height was not such that it would be something that we could support as being overbearing. But in terms of the practical options of looking at this, there's always a different way of doing it. If I could just clarify, by the way, the 3 meters depth is all about the effect on the adjoining neighbour. It's the height here that we're looking at on the boundary. You could explore with the applicant whether or not they reduce the height at that point, or whether or not they set it off the boundary at that point, because obviously every meter you set something off the boundary, it elevates, it increases the amount of sky that you see, because the angle of elevation when you view the top point of the extension is reduced. So the applicant could be asked to explore whether or not they would accept a narrower extension, setting it off the boundary, or whether or not they would accept some reduced headroom close to the boundary, which is entirely possible, and that's what we do with these infill extensions, because they then replicate what would be a 2 meter high boundary fence, and what you get there is you get reduced headroom, but you do get some space that you can use, albeit that you're not going to walk around under it in case, because of the thickness of the insulation, the depth of the ceiling, you not got enough headroom. So you could invite them to reduce the depth, therefore reducing the amount of wall that is on the boundary. You could invite them to set it off the boundary, therefore effectively reducing the angle of elevation at the top of the building, or you could ask them to chamfer the profile at that point, so you have like a lean-to roof. And those are the three options if you want to explore, but otherwise you need to consider whether or not you agree with our point of view that this is not sufficiently overbearing to justify refusal. And it's open to you if you wish us to go back, but obviously you might, under those circumstances, invite us to determine the application under delegated powers if the applicant was not amenable to amendment under your direction.
Okay, thank you for that, Robert. Okay, you've heard what the officer has stated, and really now it's down to members to decide what we want to do with it. I take on board what all the members have said, and obviously what Robert has said.
Could I
given that,
just clarify
go on.
something, Chair, before you go ahead? We have
Yeah.
in fact already invited the applicant to lower the height further, and they have declined to do so. So that will clarify where you stand in terms of making a decision tonight, I think.
Okay.
Sorry, I
Right.
interrupted your flow.
No. That's fine. That's fine. So, what I was going to ask was if members are minded. Sorry, go on, Salman.
Chair, sorry, Robert raised quite an interesting point there at the last moment. Why did you already invite the applicant to reduce the height, and then why did you accept it once they refused to go with your recommendation to reduce the height?
Well, put simply, if we can achieve a modification that resolves an objection, we will try to do so. We don't want to go head to head. We want to try and find a neighbourly compromise. But if the applicants don't share that view, then we are where we are with a submission that has to be considered on its merits.
Okay, Salman.
Thanks, Robert. I think that's got me off the fence.
Okay, right.
So I have been trying to get in actually before
have you
called
yeah,
Robert.
no. Okay, go on, Richard.
Yeah, because I have a differing opinion. I mean, I'm looking at these drawings and I see that you know, the bottom fence is north facing, and the majority of the shade is in fact coming from the person's own trees. So you know, I get a little bit of a problem here about that. You know, and this is why I was getting, when we were first looking at it, I assumed we were talking about a property that was immediately running parallel to the existing, you know, to the property we were talking about. But we're not. We're talking about one that's at right angles. And when we talk about the height of the roof, when we talk about 3 meters, that's not the height that, you know, that the door is or that the ceiling is. It's the height of the top of the roof after you put in beams and everything else to hold the roof up. So you're not going to get it down to 2 meters because you'll be forever banging your head on everything. It just wouldn't be suitable. I'm doubtful about, you know, doing any alterations there. The only thing that I would see is the possibility, and looking at the plan on page 14, where we see the, if you like, the, I don't know, it looks like a table and chairs around which is what is in that extension, and the area to the south of that particular bit of extension has not actually got anything in it. Now I could see that you could taper the roof, not down to 2 meters. I think that would be crazy, but you could certainly taper the roof where it says sort of the new, oh, you're moving it, where it says the words new family room. I mean, at the bottom end of that, maybe a meter back from there, that you could have tapered it down to something. But I think if you're trying to get it down to 2 meters, then I don't think that's going to be very successful. People will be walking about ducking their heads down inside. Anybody that's, you know, above my height would be. I'm 5'11", and I think I'd be a bit worried about it.
Okay, Richard,
Yeah,
thank you for that. Salman, I see your finger up. Yes.
Yeah, no, I think I'm the same height as you, Richard. But I think there are means of doing it. I mean, it might externally be 2 meters or whatever, but internally you can just dig into the ground so that when you enter from the inside of the building, you step down and you're at a physically lower floor height than the ground.
Okay. Let me bring in Councillor Dennis.
We've already talked. Yeah, so we've already talked about water in the ground there, Chair. I'm not quite sure how that affects that particular area, but it is in the report about water being there.
Right. Let's ask Councillor Dennis, and I really want to start wrapping this up. Right, Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that I think, and as Councillor Foote says, I think, you know, making an order to go down to 2 meters would be unfair, but certainly we could consider a reduction of that wall, it going further back, which would actually increase the size of the garden, which I'm in favour of. And also thinking about materials like glass, you know, maybe if glass were used at that height, that would allow the light to come in, that sort of thing. So if we were to defer to give the applicant the sort of flexibility to have a think about what he might want to do, that's all I was going to say.
Okay, look, you know, we've all got views on this, be it that some of them are still people who want to sit on the fence. But look, I think the best way of moving forward is, if you're not sure, for somebody to move deferral, and then we will defer that item for further negotiation, right? For what it's worth, actually for moving deferral, right? But I will go with the committee because I think members are justified in some of their concerns. I think that too much emphasis is being placed on the light element of it, but you know, nevertheless, you know, if one of you move, then we will go to the vote on and see where the committee members want to be, whether on the fence or otherwise. Okay, so is somebody going to move any particular proposal on this application? Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Chair. Could I move for a vote on deferral, please?
Okay, so that's been moved, and Councillor Shaheen.
I second that.
Okay, so I have on the table a movement for deferral, and it's been seconded. So we're going to go to the vote for deferring this item, right? So Councillor Richard Foote.
Yes, Chair, I'd agree with the deferral vote.
Right, yeah, before you do it in that way, you need to be going to the prescriptive method. Yes, I have been here for the whole,
Yeah, sorry.
debate.
Yep. I was thinking of it in an entirely different way. Right, yes, Chair, I'm Councillor Richard Foote, Vice Chair of Planning, and I have been here for the whole of the debate, and I will vote in agreement with the move to defer.
Okay. Councillor Michael Dennis.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, my name is Councillor Dennis, and I have been in attendance throughout the whole of the debate, and I vote in favour of this motion.
Deferral.
Deferral. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Councillor Hina Mir.
Hello, this is Councillor Hina Mir, and I've heard all the debate, and I will support the motion moved by Councillor Dennis.
Okay. Fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Salman Shaheen.
My name's Councillor Salman Shaheen. I've been here for the whole of this debate. I look forward to being here for the whole of the next debate. Now it's really going to be deferred, but it could be falling upon another lucky councillor, seeing as we're on a rota system. I vote to defer.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mohammed Amer.
Hi, Councillor Mohammed Amer. I've been present throughout the whole debate, and I vote for deferral.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Amrit Mann, I've been present for the whole debate. I've heard all the evidence, and I'm in agreement with my committee to move deferral. So this item is deferred, right? And now, seeing as that it's gone 7 o'clock or just over 7, we're going to have a 10-minute comfort break, which will give Robert the opportunity to try to get back online and get the video running, and also Hina for the same reason. Okay, so it's 2 minutes past 7, and we will reconvene at 12 minutes past 7. Colleagues, thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Sadiq, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. I've no idea why I can't get the video up. Mind you, to be fair, my video's been switched, my camera's been switched off.
Just to remind you that this is still going out live.
Yep. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, Sadiq.
Hello.
Hi there. This is Councillor Hina Mir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hello, Sadiq. I tried to turn my laptop on, but still I cannot access the Teams. Well, I can access the Teams. I'm not able to get the 6 numbers code.
Now it's working.
Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Mir, can I, if that's the case, can I advise you to stay on the call then for the entirety of this meeting, if you're not able to access your laptop?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, so far it's been working fine, so I think you'll be all right.
This one is fine. I'll be able to carry on with like at the moment,
Yeah.
but I won't be able to access the Teams, the camera.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
as long as you're happy with that. That's.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Okay,
I have no issues.
perfect.
Okay,
Perfect.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Chairman, it's Jessica here. Councillor Mann, can you hear me?
Hasn't got his headset on, Jessica.
Okay.
No, he's putting them on now.
Hi, hello, Councillor Mann. It's Jessica here. I just wanted to remind you about the standing orders, the guillotine, the suspension standing orders. We probably should do that first.
Okay, we'll do that straight away. Yeah. Who else is online?
Yeah, I'm here, Chair. I'll do it.
Okay,
It's
that's
Richard,
good.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Richard, thank you.
So,
Salman, Hina.
Sorry, Chair. Councillor Mir was unable to access Teams, so she's
still on the phone.
She's still on the phone. Yeah.
That's fine. That's fine. Okay.
Present, Chair.
Okay, Salman, well done. Michael.
Yes, I'm here, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Right, shall we kick off? Sadiq, so whenever you're ready, yeah?
Whenever you're ready, sure.
I don't think Umair's here yet, is he?
Umair?
I'm in.
Umair, right?
I'm in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in.
Okay, good. Okay, right. Let's start. Welcome back. I think we've run into a technical hitch on our suspension of standing orders, so we need to get that done first. We're close to the time. Councillor Richard Foot.
Yeah, I'll move suspension of standing orders, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Seconder. Salman, thank you. Okay, right. So let's go straight in. This time is pressing on, and welcome to Robert. We can see him now. Let's go to item 6, and there are no speakers.
Turn his camera off, Chair. I'm kidding, Robert. I'm kidding.
Okay, without further ado, Robert, there are no speakers on this, so it's over to you for the main report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm fully online. 13 Stratton Close is a flat just off Heston Lane. I always get the name of that road wrong. And it has been converted into 2 flats. It had 3 bedrooms, and it has been converted into 2 flats. And you'll see from the case officer's report that there have been a series of applications relating to this. The last 2 applications, P6 and P7, were refused because of the loss of family-sized housing and the lack of appropriate cycle parking. And the lack of amenity space. You can see here it's a you can't see here it's a 3-story block, but it is a 3-story block. And all of these flats on Stratton Close are unusual in that they have garages to the northeast and a rear access road and path that takes them to their rear gardens. And you can see that the rear gardens of numbers 15 and 17 are here, but number 13 always had a very large rear garden at the back. We've got some, so there it is, and you can see it backs onto very large green area, backs onto Lambton Park. So here you can see the building, and
Robert.
Oh, I'm not sharing, am I? Thank you very much.
Yeah. So whilst you can see it, we are just looking at you.
Yeah.
Right.
There we go.
So
that's a relief for you. Right.
That's good. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you. Yes, there you go. The large red area is the rear garden for flat 13, and the blue area, the blue area is the garden for flat 15, I believe. So to access it at the moment, there are locked gates here, and all residents come round the back, go through a rear alleyway. There are their garages, and they have these gardens here. And as you can see, it's a singularly large garden backing onto Lambton Park. There's the building, 3 stories. It's had its own. The 2 flats have had their own entrances created, and the difference between this application and the previously refused one is that by repurposing some of the storage space, they have been able to make flats that fully comply with the nationally defined space standards, nationally described space standards, and therefore they are sufficiently large to merit the grant of planning permission. And they have also, here's the layout, so you can see the existing 4-bedroom flat, not 3-bedroom flat, I stand corrected, with a dining room, living room, kitchen and a toilet. And it becomes, on the first floor, a 2-bedroom flat with a dining room and living room and kitchen. And on the second floor, a 2-bedroom flat. And this 2-bedroom flat is the family-sized unit. You can see that the bedrooms here are larger than they are for the first floor. So what they have done is they have overcome the reasons for refusal by providing a cycle store at the front here, which is one of these nice dome-shaped cycle hangers, and they have provided sufficiently large internal floor area to comply with council design standards and national design standards indeed. Therefore, while there are a number of objections, we do not recommend refusal anymore because we think that the reasons for refusal have been overcome. The objections in summary are increase in effects on local utilities, and we don't think that splitting this would achieve that. Parking stress, we think that there is sufficient capacity on street to deal with any additional parking generated. Lack of proper waste storage, that's provided for. Increase in antisocial behaviour, we can see no reason to justify that. A comment that the cycle parking would harm the appearance of the area and is on flat number 15's garden, and we have established that it is land within the applicant's control and it's a suitable size, and the garden has very little to recommend it at the moment. Harm to the character of the area, we can't see how subdividing it would harm the character of the area in this case, and harm to neighbours through loss of privacy. No loss of privacy because there are no new windows. Outlook, no loss of outlook because there is no extension to the building, and noise, not significantly different from the existing larger flat. So bearing those points in mind, we recommend approval, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you, Robert. Okay, let me go through my committee members, starting with Richard Foote. Questions to Robert on his report.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Robert, there is one question which sort of makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up a little bit, where it talks about that the previous extension was built without planning permission. But really, I need to know what sort of recourse do we have to ensure that the changes that we're talking about do happen.
You use the word extension. Do you mean the change of use took place?
I'm sorry, no, I didn't say extension. So I said it was built without planning permission.
Yes, that's fine.
Now I'm assuming that it is either P6 or P7. The fact that they rejected, they carried on and did whatever they were going to do.
Yeah. Yes, they did. It is true, but what we're getting them to do is we're getting them to these plans are a modification of what they've done. So while, as far as we can tell, it's being, well, actually, no, if I go back to the photographs, you can see it's actually not occupied at the moment. So to be fair to them, while they've carried out a conversion, they haven't actually, there's nobody actually living in the flats. As these are recent internal photographs that you can see. If I enlarge that a bit more, you will see that. So while they have subdivided it, they have held fire, they have not caused it to be occupied. And what we have done is we've recommended conditions requiring that they obtain an inspection from us before occupation takes place, in order that we can be satisfied that they have conformed fully to the submitted drawings in this case. I wouldn't normally do that, but because it's effectively a retrospective application, we do need to achieve that.
Yeah, that's fine, Robert. Yeah, that you've picked up on my point entirely. Yeah, thank you very much, Robert.
Yes, it's basically conditions 4 and 5.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Michael Dennis.
Thank you,
Questions
Chair.
to Robert.
Thank you. Yes, Robert, just following on from what Councillor Richard Foote said, once you've seen the property, if we vote in favour of this today and you see and you are not satisfied, what is the procedure following that?
Prosecution. It was a breach of condition, so it's not. We don't have to go through the laborious or comparatively laborious process of serving an enforcement notice and seeing if they appeal against the enforcement notice. Because it's a condition, we can prosecute them for breaching the condition, and that goes straight to court. So it's actually a more streamlined form of enforcement.
I see. No, that's what I was going to ask. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hina Mir.
Hello, good evening. This is Councillor Hina Mir here. I would like to raise point on the access to 13A. It says here it does not comply with fire regulations, nor it is suitable for a shade hallway. So I just want some clarification on this. And also I would like to echo what Councillor Dennis said, that then again, if they have a detailed history of applications here from, well, going back years and years. So again, if they want to comply with what council obligations, then going to court will cost council. So it's a hefty, of course, if we do go into that, that's a hefty cost for council. So what assurances we have that they will comply to the council policies and regulations?
Well,
thank you very much.
I would say that they have been remarkably compliant. I'm surprised that we're not dealing with an appeal against their previous applications, which suggests that they are more likely than not to conform and to cooperate. And in terms of fire hazard, that's entirely within the control of the building regulations. And a 3-storey building like this does have to have specific fire protection measures, which can be achieved with comparatively little modification to the existing fabric.
Is there a plan attached to the access to 13A?
I think you'll find it's. Let me have a look and see if it's. Yeah, there's
page 27 or.
It's page 24.
24.
So you've got a common staircase, stairwell, 3-storey stairwell, which comes in at the front. And go. You walk down the hallway. You turn around and you go upstairs, and then you do the same again at 1st floor level.
All right. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Hina. Councillor Salman Shaheen.
No questions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Mohammed Umair. Councillor Mohammed Umair.
You're on mute.
Oh, sorry, no questions. Thank you, Chair.
No questions. Okay, and that only leaves myself. Robert, I mean, I'm a bit confused on this, right? Because I thought our policy was that we are trying to retain large family dwellings, right? And the planning history shows that it's been refused loss of family-sized housing.
Yeah.
Now, you know, when other people do that around Hounslow, we go straight to enforcement, you know, and yet we've got a retrospective planning application in front of us trying to overcome one of our main criteria for retaining large family homes. Why are we allowing them to sort of proceed with this?
Because in this case it was purpose-built flat rather than a house, and it only became the size it did as a result of extensions that we've granted in the past. So they were always flats. If it was a house with its own directly accessible garden, I would be much more sensitive about it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that they are retaining one of the flats would now be 2 double or twin bedrooms. The other one would accommodate 3 people. At the top, and the one with the 2 larger bedrooms would accommodate 4. And therefore, in terms of the council's planning policy, this is still retaining a family dwelling. So it's every case on its merits, and there is a distinct case here where they are meeting the intent of the policies. And to be honest, it's not a 4-bedroom flat is not really ideal in this location because you're already up on the first floor before the family get up there. So from that point of view, we think that this is actually a reasonably good use of the housing stock, and provided they provide adequate space standards, which they now have done, we think that that would be acceptable.
Okay, but the PTAL, yeah, is very poor. So now where you had a family that was going to access or not access a very good transport links. Now you got at least four people that are now subject to the same thing. So how do we, in terms of the planning side of things, say it's acceptable with a low planning with a low PTAL?
Well, the dwellings are already there, or sorry, I'll rephrase that. That makes it sound the street is already a street of dwellings, and so what we're talking about here is providing one extra dwelling and subdividing the existing previously extended building, and having looked at the local parking stress, we think in terms of demand for car parking that the street and the local area can accommodate this adequately. I went to the street myself today, and all of the houses on the street have got, or most of the houses on the street have got 2 off-street parking spaces. So that does mean that Stratton Close itself has got room for extra cars related to a household, and it's not the best PTAL, but it is reasonably accessible to Hounslow West Station, and it's reasonably accessible to Central Hounslow Station, and there is a bus route, albeit that it's not the most frequent buses. So on balance, we didn't think that refusing this because of inadequate transport links would, on its own, would be adequate reason for refusal. And this isn't likely to happen in any of the other flats because none of the other flats were as large as this one had been after it had been extended.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that, Robert. Let me move on to the debate and comment side of things. So, Councillor Richard Foote, any comments, any debate?
No, I think Robert's probably picked up my fears, but about the planning application, previous planning applications, and yeah, I can see that they've seem to have done a pretty good job in making good use of what the space is there. So you've now got a 4-bedroom or a 4-person flat and a 3-person flat, which is obviously an improvement on what was there before. So yeah, I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, Councillor Michael Dennis.
Thank you, Chair. I've had a good look at this application, and I concur with what Councillor Richard Foote has said. No further comment from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hina Mir.
No comments, Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor Salman Shaheen.
It looks all fine to me. I'd concur with all of Robert's comments on it.
Okay. Councillor Mohammed Umair.
No comments from myself, Chair.
Okay, and likewise from me, no comments. So we have a recommendation by the officers on the report for approval. If somebody wants to move the officer's recommendation, or
yeah,
different
I'm going to share.
Okay.
Councillor Foote, yeah.
Councillor Foote, is there a seconder for Councillor Foote? Yes. Councillor Michael Dennis, thank you. Right, so I have a formal proposal that's been seconded. So now we move to the vote, and starting with Councillor Richard Foote. So Richard, you have to go into prescription method.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, I'm Councillor Richard Foote of Hamworth Ward, and I vote in favour of the resolution.
Right, thank you. Councillor Michael Dennis.
Good evening. Yes, my name is Michael, Councillor Dennis of Chiswick Riverside Ward, and I vote in favour of the resolution.
Okay. Councillor Hina Mir.
Hello, good evening. I'm Councillor Hina Mir, and I would like to confirm my vote in favour of the officer's report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Salman Shaheen.
I'm Councillor Salman Shaheen of Isleworth Ward. I confirm I've been here for the entirety of the debate. I note that my colleagues haven't confirmed that, so I've got no proof, much like Schrodinger's cat, that they've actually been here. And I vote in. But despite that, I vote in favour of these recommendations.
Thank you, Salman. Councillor Mohammed Amer.
Councillor Mohammed Amer, I confirm my presence throughout the debate and I vote in favour.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Amrit Mann, I've been here for the whole of the debate, heard all the evidence, and I also vote in favour. And I also take on board Councillor Salman Shaheen's point, because we're on video, except Councillor Heen Amir, everybody has been present for the duration of the debate and heard the evidence. So that's unanimously carried, colleagues. Thank you for that. And let's move on now to item 7, which is 585 to 603 London Road. And it's again over to you because there are no speakers, Robert. So take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Am I? Yes, I can. I'm not muted. Members will probably be familiar with this site. It's on London Road, close to Thornbury Park, opposite the parade of shops, the small parade of shops near the fire station. And as you can see at the moment, it's an industrial site in an area with quite a bit of industrial history, but it's not one of the industrial sites that is sought to be protected in the local plan. It's got an area of 0.5 hectare. You can see to the east, I'll zoom in, that there's some new housing here which faces towards the site, and some new flats behind which are side onto the site. And then to the west is Meon Court, which is a block of council flats which is side on. It does have some windows facing the site, but there is a very heavy tree screen all the way down here. The proposal is for 85 flats to replace the existing single-storey buildings, car sales at the front, car repairs and other industrial uses at the back. And here we go. This shows what the site looks like at the moment.
Is it 85, Robert, or 87?
Good question.
Because 1.1 suggests 87.
Yes, it's 87. There, at one point, when I was proof checking the report a while back, it said 85 at one point and 87 at the other, and I've now fallen foul of the memory trick. Yes, it's 87. Thank you, Chair. So the proposal is effectively one T-shaped building with a 4-storey frontage onto London Road, with an undercroft access here, and with 2 disabled persons parking spaces and a turning head for service vehicles. The building rises in height towards the centre and then declines in height again towards the back, with the houses of Sidmouth Gardens at the back end here. And you can see that there's a generously sized private amenity space which meets our standards, and there's a reasonable separation from any potentially sensitive buildings. So we think that there is no harm to neighbours. We think it's a suitable site for a low car development, which this is. Excuse me, I'm just going to get a drink. And it meets your relevant planning standards, including, and I'll go to some elevations so you can see them. There we go. This is going through all the floor plans. So this is ground floor. First floor, the archway through is double height to allow large vehicles through. Second floor, third floor. Then at 4th floor, the height of the building steps back so that to maintain a comparable scale to the shops opposite on London Road, which are 3 stories with tall pitched roofs. 5th floor, only a tall section at the back, and then on the roof, solar panels. All of the outdoor space is on the ground level, not using any of the roof space, and houses and the flats also have balconies, and every flat has a balcony. So this is what you would see facing London Road, and you can see the paler image at the back is where the floor level rises up behind, and you will see from the side elevation that this is the London road frontage, and comparatively low and comparable to what is opposite. So the main mass of the height is in the middle of the site. We think it's been well laid out so that it doesn't hurt neighbours. It's got a good distance from neighbours so that there is no unacceptable effect on neighbours' privacy. The proposed materials and design have been thought through in order to achieve some coherence and bring a nice framing to the street scene that would mirror, in some senses, the properties opposite with the tall vertical emphasis that they have. So the site works well. It's all of the houses meet, all the flats meet relevant standards. The amenity space meets relevant standards. The layout complies with amenity space and servicing requirements, and we recommend approval, and I welcome your questions.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Right, we move into the questions, starting off with Councillor Richard Foot. Richard?
Yes, Chair. I don't think Robert mentioned the split between affordable that we're talking here. I make it 37%. I think is what it works out to.
That's correct, Councillor.
Yeah. Now there is. I mean, first of all, I must say I love the amount of trees that seem to have sprung up here, because I'm looking at the Google map for today, and none of those trees appear to be there. But if this is how many they're putting in there, I think you made up your quota for the year on planning, I think. But no, wonderful number of trees going in. Now I have a question around. If I get to the right page. Yeah, the community infrastructure levy. Maybe it's a question I should have asked at some time in the past and got my answer. But seeing as that, I think the comment makes that about the area, and then it goes on to finish up saying less any relief granted for affordable units. What is not clear is where that relief is going to come from. Is it going to come out of our 470,000, or is it going to come out of the mayor's 235, or is it going to be shared equally? Be interesting to know who actually pays for that.
It's shared equally, Chair. Put simply, affordable housing does not attract community infrastructure levy, so we may only levy on the non-affordable dwellings.
Okay. So,
and that's been the case from the outset.
So this 705,000 is where it's already been. No, it hasn't, has it? No. So it's not already been reduced. I don't get it. Sorry.
No, that is the amount that will be received.
Right. Okay. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I understand. I'll come back at another meeting.
Oh no, I stand corrected. Now I read the paragraph. That is not the amount that would be received. Each of the none of the affordable units would attract a community infrastructure levy. So you have to net out from that 700 odd thousand. You then have to net out basically 35% of it. Assuming that the affordable housing does meet that 37%, then yeah, the actual figure would be less.
Okay, but it's out of the total sum. We're not carrying all the can here.
No. It's you cannot levy CIL on affordable housing. Therefore, the mayor and the council are equally disadvantaged by that.
Okay,
if that's a word you like to use.
Yeah, no, that explains it nicely. Thank you very much, Robert.
Okay. Yeah. Moving on to Councillor Michael Dennis. Questions to Robert.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Robert. I was just looking at the provision for car parking spaces, and there would be sort of 6 accessible car parking spaces. Now, would there be? Is there? It just occurs to me that that might not be enough. I mean, for people who are occupying all the flats. What's your take on this?
Right. Well, it's intended not to have 100% car parking provision.
Yes.
And the affordable sorry, not the affordable, the parking spaces are provided and intended to meet the needs of disabled persons who need a car.
I see.
And there is scope, you'll see in the report, there is scope actually to increase the number of parking spaces should that be necessary in this particular case because of the comparatively generous nature of the site layout.
Yes, I see. Yes, I see that. And would there be flexibility to include sort of electric car charging? That's one thing that we're doing as a council. We're trying to increase the sort of green section of this. And I was wondering if there is flexibility to one day introduce sort of electric car parking.
Yes, it's a requirement that 20% of the proposed spaces are for electric vehicles.
Yes.
And that the remainder have to be provided with the ability simply to install charging facilities later. It's what they call passive. So basically the wiring's there, but the columns are not.
Oh, I see.
Because obviously the columns are comparatively expensive.
Yes.
So when demand increases, those columns can be brought in by the occupier.
And is that minimum met in the report?
Yes, it's paragraph 7.75 and condition 11.
I apologise. Yes, I see. So sorry, let me just get that 7.75. Did I miss that? And sorry, did you say 7.7?
7.75. It's on page 50.
Yes, of course. Yep, fine.
And the diagram below shows where the parking spaces are. So you can see there's some alongside the access road. There are 6 alongside the access road, and there are 1, 2, 3 others actually.
Yeah. Yes, I see that.
If I read those correctly.
Yeah, apologies. I missed that when I read it. Thank you for pointing that out. That's very helpful. Thank you. No more from me. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hina Mir, any questions, Robert?
Hello, this is Councillor Hina Mir. No questions from my end, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Salman Shaheen.
Thank you very much, Chair. Okay, so looking at page 31, 1.8, we discussed the amount of affordable housing, the percentage of affordable housing being 37%, well, close to 37% anyway. By my calculations, we would only need to add 3 more affordable housing units to make the 40% requirement. Why are we not adding those 3 more units just to get it over the line? Obviously, we've got our 5,000 pledge, and across the borough, we are looking at minuscule sites now to try and get us over that 5,000 line, some of which aren't necessarily always suitable. So why not, when we've got this larger development, medium scale development, get 3 sites in here rather than 3 sites in somewhere that might not be as appropriate? That's one question. Second question, on page 47, 7.60, it says all flats benefit from private amenity space that meet or exceed our requirements, but by our own sums on the next page, they don't meet or exceed our requirements. In fact, they fall short of our requirements, not by much, but they do fall short. How do we square that?
Okay, what it means is that the individual private amenity space, the balconies, meet or exceed. And yes, you're right. There is a minor shortfall in terms of the overall provision, but it's so insignificant as not to be something that would stand in the way. Because we're only talking about we're talking about less than 1 square metre per dwelling. We're talking about just over half a square metre per dwelling overall. And given where it is with Thornbury Park immediately next door, and given the unusually good quality of the layout in terms of amenity space, we didn't think that modest shortfall was something that would stand in the way of recommending approval. 98% of required amenity space provision, and each of the balconies meets standard.
Someone?
Yeah, that's question 2 answered. But
yep.
You know, question 1 is why can't we get 3 more affordable housing units out of it?
Yeah, I'm just going to scroll back through the relevant bit of the report to answer that question. In a nutshell, we have emerging London plan policy now, which is newer than our local plan policy and has been through examination in public, which is like a public inquiry to test its validity, and it's about to be adopted. And basically that says that if a minimum affordable housing level of 35% is provided without subsidy, the application can be treated as a fast track application and not required to provide a viability assessment at application stage. And so the plan is very advanced, and this is a material consideration. So what it does do is it secures the possibility of a review at a later stage to see if there can be an uplift during, if the finances change, there can be an uplift during construction. And we did have a financial viability assessment submitted with the application, but the scheme has subsequently been changed. So the current scheme doesn't conform to that original submission, but the council's viability consultant says that the affordable offer is the maximum reasonable amount for this site, particularly noting the mayor's fast track approach. So what the aim here is to get the housing out quickly, and that's why the policy has been written in that way. So it simplifies the planning application procedure if you can say, yes, we will definitely provide 35%. Is there any other question on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, with respect, I mean, forgive me, I've only been on the planning committee for about 18 months, but
yeah,
you know, whenever a similar case has come up where we know that legislation is coming in that might materially change things, but it hasn't actually passed yet, we stick with the old legislation. This has happened on, you know, in terms of local legislation too, in terms of, you know, environmental standards. This has come up time and time again over our climate emergency we passed. Equally, I mean, we're reviewing our own local plan at the moment, and our requirements are going to go up above 40% if that is indeed passed at any point in the future. But we're not counting that in there. So I need a bit more convincing.
Okay.
On why we can't squeeze 3 extra units out here.
Well, put simply, that plan is now at such an advanced stage that it carries quite a significant weight in this case because it's directly relevant to this provision. But I would also draw your attention to paragraph 7.23 of the report, which says that if you look at the habitable room provision, it's actually more than 40% of the habitable rooms in the development are affordable housing. So 37% by number of dwellings, but 40% based on habitable rooms. And based on the advice from our own viability consultant and considering the status of the emerging London plan, we did not feel that it was appropriate to prolong discussions on this. We simply don't think that we are going to get a better offer.
And what do you think would happen if you did stamp your feet and try for a better offer?
I think they'd probably appeal, and I think that they would win the appeal because the London plan is such a strong definition of what is acceptable. It's not that we're running scared of that. It's just a pragmatic approach to getting development underway.
No further questions, thank you.
And we do have the clawback mechanism if viability changes during the process of development. So there is a possibility of an uplift, because some of these are private flats, and if they sell for more than was anticipated, there will be some, to put it crudely, excess profit that some of which could be clawed back in terms of affordable housing, either on site or as a local contribution. And that's built into the recommended agreement.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Let me move on to Councillor Mohammed Omer.
Thank you, Chair. No questions for myself.
Okay, and myself, no. Robert's off the hook on that one. Okay, so we've had a debate. Really, now it's time to see whether we agree with the officer or not. So, is somebody going to move the proposal?
Oh, sorry, Chair. With respect, I think that was questions. I have a point of debate as well.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So, sorry.
I'm turning into Councillor Todd here, but I'm getting very.
A very good thing.
Okay. God forbid. Okay, let's go to the debate. Sorry, my apologies. Yeah, debate. Councillor Richard Foote, any comments or debate?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Salman jumped in before I could get there. But yes, right, sorry, now I'm disrupted. Yeah, really run question, going back to the affordable. At one of our recent planning meetings, a developer came in and talked about 25%, saying that this is what was Hounslow Council's accepted policy now. And I challenged Peter Matthews on this last week, and he denied it and said, no, it's 40%. And in the long term, we're looking for 50%. So, you know, I don't know if there's a feeling out there in the market that says something different to what the reality is. And I'm a bit worried, and I think probably picks up what Salman was saying, is that, you know, we're maybe being, I don't know, I won't call it going soft on them, but we sometimes we fall very short. I mean, this doesn't fall very short. I mean, but some of the developments do fall like that, and the one in Feltham the other week certainly did. It felt, you know, considering it was a building that we used to own and we sold, you know, and then there's not enough money in it to develop to get a reasonable return on it. So I don't know. I just feel that we, you know, if this is the situation that's going to come about, that we, Peter was quite adamant that we should be looking for 40%, and in the long term 50%, then, you know, I'm just wondering where we really are at here. Cheers, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Michael Dennis, comments and debate.
Yes, I mean, thank you, Chair. I second what Councillor Salmon was probing about the extra flats. I mean, I do fully support the council's ambition to increase the number of housing, and it's a sad thing that there is that risk of appeal. But other than that, I would be in favour of this application. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Hina Mir.
No comment from me, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Salman Shaheen.
Thanks, Chair. Just to Councillor Foote, you challenged Peter Matthew not 2 days ago. It's obviously, it feels like a very long week that it feels like last week, but with all these Zoom meetings going into the early hours, it was in fact this week. No, my comment is, no, I mean, I appreciate that we're so on the margins here. We're so close to the line. We're close to the line in terms of affordable housing percentages. We're also close to the line in the amount of private amenities. It's 98%. That's a great percentage. It's not 100%. But what are we doing to justify 98%? We are justifying it by its proximity to Thornbury Park. Now, a lot of new developments have a proximity to Thornbury Park. We've got Tesco and Homebase coming up. That's been a very controversial item at this planning committee. You know, we've got so many new flats coming up in the area, and you know, if we're going to have flats, we have to have green space around that people can use. And you know, every 2% off 100% of green space of private amenities in a development around Thornbury Park means another little bit of Thornbury Park that's taken up by people who don't have the room themselves. We are eating into Thornbury Park. I mean, I listened to Councillor Lukey tell me the other day, Thornbury Park with all the flats that have been developed, all the people who've moved into the area, it is getting busier and busier and busier by as time goes by. That's a little bit of a worry that we can't get to 100%, and we're falling back on Thornbury Park again. So my suggestion, and I like this development. It looks beautiful. I think, you know, I think it's very nearly there. My suggestion would be to have a condition added to it that we get to 40% or affordable housing, and we get to 100% private amenity space. It's a minor thing, but I would hope we wouldn't get challenged over that tiny little nudge in the right direction.
Okay, Salman. let me go through the running order and then we'll come back to you. Councillor Mohammed Umair.
No questions for myself, Chair.
Okay. And myself, in terms of comment and debate, I've heard what Richard said and obviously what Salman is proposing, but I think I'm in agreement with Robert in some of the comments that he made earlier on, which is that you've got to look at each of these cases on their merits. And I mean, Richard did cite last week's planning application for a case in Feltham. I think the PTAL was very low, and a lot of developers wouldn't develop, and I think the percentage of profit was 14% or 15%, and some large developers, I don't know who the developer is here, but you know, they would work at 25%, right, profit margin. Anything less, they just wouldn't build. We in Hounslow, we have a set target of 40% affordable. That is our target, but at this moment in time, given that the developments are almost all sort of coming to a halt, and we're in uncharted territory in terms of finances and so forth, really, you know, for the sake of 2-3 additional units, 37% is a good percentage, right? And you know, I'm with Robert on this one. If it did go to appeal and we would lost, we would have to incur costs as well, because these sort of large developments are also coming with very good legal teeth. So I'm minded to approve, and I know that Salman wants to add a condition. I would try to dissuade him, but you know, I would let Robert come in to see what is possible. That's not to say that, you know, it's totally a done deal in regards to no condition or a condition, but we can ask Robert, see what is possible. I'd rather have a development than no development, if you see what I'm saying in terms of the social housing element of it. So really, you know, that's my comment, that's my debate, and the rest is down to the committee, as I say. Robert, do you want to come in? And you've heard us all in some of our concerns regarding this development. Maybe you want to address Salman's first, right, to see why we can't get to the 40%, as in being a stickler for 40%. Go over to you.
Government guidance on these things is that regardless of what the council's policy says in number terms, there is always a get out, and that applies even in our policies. While 40% is a target, if it cannot be shown to be viable at that level, then we cannot insist on it. So with a 30%, 37% unit by unit and 40% by rooms, habitable rooms, we felt that was as close as we were going to get to the target in this case. And our viability consultant says the same thing. And in addition, the Mayor's emerging policy says that we should, which will override our policy regardless, even if our policy, new policy postdates that. It will say you just simply have to approve it without questioning the viability if they achieve that level. So that's the first thing. The second thing is what I did actually say about the amenity space was not only that Thornbury Park was next door, but actually it's a surprisingly good amenity space layout. And for the sake of half a square metre, less than half a square metre per dwelling, that was not something that we felt was going to be either noticeable or have an unacceptable impact on the future occupiers. It's difficult to try and impose a condition in terms of requiring those things. I doubt their legality, but ultimately, all of that said, there is a clawback mechanism. So if the development is more profitable than has been assumed, then we will be able to get some more affordable housing out of it. So because it's so close to the wire, that's why we were recommending approval. And yeah, just to concur with Richard Foote, Councillor Foote, sorry, where the 25% came from, I can only assume it's because that particular development in Felton was not considered to be viable at a higher level of provision. But we do scrutinise them all. And if they're coming in under 35%, there's no doubt that we would be scrutinising it very closely. Any more questions?
Okay, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, can I just say about the 25%? I mean, I'm quite of the feeling that we had a developer trying to pull the wool over our eyes by saying that. I think that was their reaction. They were telling us that Hounslow Council's policy was 25% and switched to 25%. That's absolute rubbish.
That's rubbish.
And that's when I'm saying they were trying to pull the wool over our eyes. And when we raised questions at the meeting, you know, there was a hell of a lot of ducking and diving going on.
Right. Okay. So if there's no further clarifications that's sought by ourselves from Robert, can we then go into the vote? So we need somebody to formally move the officer's recommendation or any
recommendation. This is Councillor Hina Mir.
Okay, so Hina Mir has moved the officer's recommendation. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it, Chair.
Right, no,
Councillor Mohammed
I'm here to the mayor.
Okay, well, I heard Mohammed Amir first.
Yeah,
right?
no,
So, so Councillor Mohammed Amir. Thank you, Richard. Councillor Mohammed Amir is second. Now, again, going back to what Salman said earlier in the previous item, we have to be prescriptive in what we say. So you all know the verses. So let me go to Councillor Richard Foote on on his vote. Right. So Richard.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can confirm that I've been here for the whole of the meeting, and my backside has got the marks from the chair to prove it, but I won't show you it all. Yes, I vote in favour, and largely because of the amount of new trees that are being added to this site, which I think is making it very attractive. But I vote in favour of this development.
Well,
thank you, Richard. And I hope that aren't just pictures on the application, so we'll hold Robert right to make sure that those trees are delivered. Okay, so Councillor Michael Dennis, your vote, sir.
Good evening. Yes, my name is Councillor Michael Dennis, which is at Riverside. I've been present for the whole debate, and I've listened to the whole debate, and I vote in favour of this proposal.
Thank you, Michael. Councillor Hina Mir.
Hello, hi, this is Councillor Hina Mir. I've been here from a long time and been listening to the debate, and would like to vote in favour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hina.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you, Hina. So, Councillor Salman Shaheen.
This is Councillor Salman Shaheen here, and I've been here for bloody hours, and I've listened to everything. And you know, look, I did have a condition, but it hasn't been seconded. But why let the perfect be the enemy of the good? You know, I do want to see these houses be built, so I vote in favour.
Thank you, Salman. Councillor Mohammed Omer.
Hi, I'm Councillor Mohammed Omer. I confirm my presence throughout the debate, and I will in favour.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Amrit Mann, I've been here for the whole debate. I've heard all the evidence, and I also vote in favour of the officer's recommendation for approval. So, colleagues, that's unanimous, right? And thank you for that. And I can tell you exactly, Salman Shaheen and Richard Foote, it's 3 hours and 38 minutes that we've been sitting down debating all of the agenda tonight. So it's been a long time, and really thank all of you for your patience, and especially those people that are watching outside. Okay, let's quickly go through the remainder bits of the agenda. Item, where are we? Item 8, which is addendum. Robert, I think that was done as part of the reports, wasn't it? The addendum item 8?
Yes, it was, Chair. I failed to mention it. There's some clarification matters only relating to the last item, which was an additional condition and some corrections to the drawing numbers, but they were only minor.
Okay.
Let me just look and see if there's anything I've missed from that. Oh yes. A response to neighbour comments received from the applicant relating to Foster Road. Well, we've had that discussion anyway. And a figure for the carbon offset payment in relation to 585 to 603 London Road, because of its 58% carbon dioxide performance at the moment. And an additional condition requiring a minimum of 8 wheelchair user dwellings to be built to building regulation standard to be within affordable housing units.
Okay, those are duly noted as part of the reports anyway. Let me move on to item 9. There are no other business which I've been made aware of as a matter of urgency. So item 10, which is the date of the next meeting, which is the 1st of October. Again, this is expected to be another virtual planning meeting. So please, those people watching, keep your eyes on the timetable for the. And may I now thank all my committee members and officers, because they've been sitting for exactly the same time. It's actually 3 hours and 41 minutes to be precise. So thank you for all your patience and perseverance. I'd like to thank people watching at home for having stuck through, right? If you've been a sucker for information for all throughout the 3 hours and 41 minutes. But I'd like to thank our producer, Sadiq, for making sure that all runs glitch free, right, tonight, because seeing as we've had some teething problems. Special thanks to Councillor Hina Mir, because she wasn't able to get in, but she's been on the phone for this long. So really thank you, Hina, for persevering with us, and all the officers from the planning officers. Okay, Hina, thank you. Planning officers, legal and governance, thank you all. I wish you really a good night, and so look forward to the next planning meeting, and hopefully it'll be shorter. So good night. Thank you. I'll close this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Good night.